High flyers, welcome to the Racing Pigeon Training and Conditioning Series Part 2. Let's get started where we left off. The training crate. Team, meet your home away from home. Your birds are loft flying and rooting. Hopefully you are really enjoying them. Now you are also feeling the anxiety as you know it's soon time to start basket training them. There's a young bird race schedule around the corner and you have to be ready for the first race. Most instructions on training skip this part of training. I think to most they really don't think about it, but they naturally include the introduction to the training crate as part of their training. The birds should be put in the training crates and left alone for an hour or more, long enough for them to get used to the cramped quarters. The crate is a different environment as they have no proclaimed territory here. They will fight if they feel another bird is too close to them. After a while they will settle down. Just like the loft, the roof, and the neighborhood, they are getting to know this environment too. It is best that they get familiar with this crate before the first training toss. Road training. Where the rubber meets the road. The birds are rooting, they've been introduced to the training crates. It's time to start road training. Road training has several purposes. First is to teach the birds their surrounding area. Most programs call for you to start road training in the direction that you will be racing from. The second purpose is to condition them. Like a weightlifter doesn't start bench pressing 300 pounds but starts at a light weight and over time builds to a higher weight, this is how we are going to training our birds. First train them approximately 1 mile from the loft. This may be difficult depending on where you live to find a decent release site that is free of wires, trees, buildings, and fences. You want to find a place that is free of most of these obstacles. Sometimes a large parking lot like a shopping mall early in the morning is a great place if there are not people and cars around. Give them at least 3 tosses where they are heading straight home. Also do not release them after they have eaten, as food is about the only motivator for getting home at this time. After they have made at least 3 successful tosses you can move them out to 3 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles, 40 miles. Do not jump to the next distance until they have made 3 successful tosses at each training location. This is what I call the confidence method. The goal here is to develop confidence in the birds. Also in doing this you are getting them slowly conditioned for each jump in distance. After 40 or 50 miles that they are training well, they are ready for the 100-mile races. Types of tosses. Developing leaders instead of followers. To this point we've discussed group tossing. This is where you take the whole team and release them at once. When the flock heads for home there is usually 1 or more leaders, at times the leaders will change but for the most part there is a lot of followers. Race winners are not followers. They are the first bird home, the cream of the crop, they do not follow. They break away and head for home in the lead. The next question is, how do we develop leaders? Through alternative types of tosses other than the flock toss. I suggest doing this at any point after the birds are getting to the 20-mile mark. You can however do this at any time even after the season has started. Small group tossing. Take the birds and start to break them down into smaller groups. Start by breaking your team in half and letting 2 groups out separately. Just as you can teach birds good habits, you can teach them bad ones as well. Once you start breaking the birds down you have to find a way to ensure each group leaves and heads for home before the next group is released. I have waited as long as 15 to 30 minutes and out of nowhere a group that disappeared out of sight returns and joins up with the group you have just released. Now, you have spent more time than you normally would for a flock toss and accomplished the same thing you would have if you hadn't let the birds go in a small group. How do you fight this? You can try releasing each group from a separate location. Let one group go and then drive 5 miles either way of the line of flight and let the next group go. It will allow for the time to go by that you would be waiting to release the next group, and hopefully it will help prevent the groups from getting together. After the birds are doing well in smaller groups, try breaking them down into even smaller groups such as 7 to 9 birds, 3 to 5 birds. Once you are down in the really small groups you are developing many more leaders instead of a pack of followers. Don't be surprised if you lose young birds in training, as some just don't have a strong homing instinct and they can just get by following the flock. It's also possible to get 3 followers together who aren't very good and they will get lost. Try to mix the groups up so you are not releasing the same birds in the same group each time. Small group tossing will pay huge dividends down the road. Single tossing. Single tossing is when you are letting one bird go at a time. Unlike small group tossing where you are trying to create and develop leaders, in single tossing you are ensuring that each bird is doing it on their own. You are also developing confidence in your birds. Just like small group tossing, you have to make strides to ensure the birds are not joining up. The best way to do this is to let a bird go, then drive a few miles and let the next one go. You can also choose a good location where you can spend hours doing something else and let a bird go every 30 minutes or so. Single tossing is a lot of work and some people don't have the time, but it has its benefits. Flag flying. Flag training is used to keep the birds loft flying beyond loft flying that they are motivated to do. Depending on what system you are racing under, birds are sometimes motivated to return to the nest or their mate. This will decrease the amount of time they spend loft flying. The only 2 ways to increase flying time is to road train them or to use flag training. Flag training is the use of a flag on a stick. Yes, this is very high-tech stuff. I use an 8-foot green garden stake with a large red piece of cloth attached to the end. When the birds are first introduced to the system, each time they want to come down and land, the flag is raised into the air, which spooks them into flying again. After a few days of this, the flag pole can be posted in front of the landing board. The birds will stay in the air until the flag is removed. A positive way to enforce this is when the flag is removed, the birds are immediately called in and fed. They will later know that when the flag is down, it's dinner time. The call will almost not be necessary as the flag will become a form of the call. Negatives of this training technique is that if birds are tired or if they become too wise, they will land on nearby structures or even try to land in a field. If you keep the edge of their hunger too sharp, this is especially true. Positives are that you maximize the amount of actual exercise time for time spent loft flying. Also, most hawk attacks occur when birds are out loft flying and are down on the ground where the hawk will ambush them. Flag training can reduce the amount of time they are at risk. Beware, however, hawks get wise too and are known to attempt to hit birds in the air if they are desperate enough. When to train? Morning, afternoon, evening. Loft flying. Loft flying should be done whenever it is convenient for you. This is one of the trainings you can adjust for your work schedule. If you work swing shift or night, the birds can fly in the morning. If you have banker's hours 9 to 5, then they can fly in the evening. There is no real danger unless you are in the habit of overfeeding your birds and they don't come inside when you give the call. If that is the case and you are loft flying in the evening, don't be surprised if 1 or 2 or more sit out overnight. At night, they can easily become dinner for predators such as owls, raccoons, possums, and cats. Road training. Morning tosses. I am of the opinion that when you road train, the release should be about the same time as the release time for regular races. This is not always the case depending on the hours you work and the schedule you have. I was fortunate enough to work 50 miles in the direction we race from and to work day shift. I took the birds with me daily and released them from a 30-mile point. The birds were getting very sharp and didn't even circle when released. I have never had the same schedule since, but it was a sweet setup. The advantages of morning tosses pay off in the summer and when training young birds, as you have the opportunity to get them up in the air before the summer heat kicks in. In Nebraska we can have extremely hot weather. If the birds have a bad toss, they have time to get down, rest and make it in before evening. No matter how good your birds are, it is my experience in this area of the country every flyer is going to have a bad toss. The disadvantage is in Oldbird training in the very early part of the spring. You have to watch your morning temperatures. If it is below 25 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit, it's probably too cold for the birds to train. Others may disagree. Regardless, there is a threshold in which the temperature will prohibit morning training. Afternoon tosses. While you don't have the advantage of releasing when race release would normally occur, you have the advantage of the best temperatures in the spring and fall for training. When it's cold, it usually warms up near noon to 2 p.m. and is ideal for tosses when those restricted to morning or late evening cannot. Also, before daylight savings time allows us to move the clock forward, the evening tosses are at even more of a disadvantage. The only handicap is when summer hits and temperatures get really high, it's almost impossible to train in the middle of the afternoon. I do know some old-timers that still trained in the afternoon on the hottest days, and one thing you could credit them for is that they developed a very tough family of birds. Evening tosses. If you can only toss in the evening, I would not go over 30 miles, as if you have a bad toss, then the birds are now restricted by the coming of sunset. Then, as discussed earlier, they will have to go down somewhere and can fall victim to predators. If you are going to train greater than 30 miles, you will have to toss on your days off. You should allow the birds a 2-hour window to get home before sunset. Club training truck. If you are fortunate enough to belong to a club that has a training truck, I strongly suggest you use it. With the escalating cost of gasoline, the club collectively can offer its members a much more economical way to train. Your birds will also learn to break from the other lofts in the club in a venue other than actual race time. Most club training trucks release in the morning, which will better prepare the birds for race releases. That's it for part 2 of racing pigeon training and conditioning. We will continue with mid-season training in part 3, so stay tuned and check out for it. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. Your free downloads are below this video. And check out my other helpful videos out on my channel. Thank you.